Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Build Shindustry Oil Platform number 3. And here we are, flying there in style in the Sipsco chopper. Oh yeah, and that's uranium blocks that I've used to make that chopper, so you better be careful if you're riding in that. You might come off of it a bit radioactive. But forgetting that, once we've landed, it's time to get to work on the oil platform. If we take a look here at what we've done before, we've got the tower in the middle, which is where we're going to house the pump, which is going to pump all the oil from the well that we found. We've got the living quarters right there, that blocky building with the yellow lamps. It's where all our guys live and eat. There's a canteen in there that we're going to put in and fully fledge out with food and stuff. And we've got a helipad in the corner, a place for us to land our chopper. But we've got a load of empty space as well. And the risk that we run is we're going to run out of space if we're not careful, because we made the living quarters quite huge. So what we need to do is make sure that we've got enough space to put in all the things we need to make it a fully functional oil platform, the tanks for the fuel and the oil, the engine bay, and the refinery bay. So let's take a look. As we pan over with a bird's eye view, we're going to put down, I think, oil tanks right about here, which means we can put the fuel tanks about here. The engine bay, which will house all the combustion engines, could go here. And then we'll need a coolant tower with a water pump for the engines here, and a refinery section to refine the oil about here. So let's get started. The first thing we started with was oil tanks. You see me putting down here steel blocks. Those are to map out where I'm going to put the glass tanks that are going to hold the oil. And then I went around them with the iron scaffold to give ourselves a framework to hold the tanks. What I want is a kind of permanent scaffold around the tanks with stairways that you should be able to climb up all the way to the top of the tanks, just so that those maintenance people can get to the top of the tanks if there are any cracks or blemishes. I've also raised it up slightly off the ground because to pump away from the tanks, we're going to need redstone engines and wooden pipes, and I'm going to put those mechanisms underneath the tanks. And to do that I need space, so I've raised the tanks slightly, by I think about 2 blocks. And then I started to build up with the scaffold and the tanks, and then build up again. I didn't want the tanks too high, because at the end of the day, the spire in the middle has to be the tallest part of the refinery, except perhaps the crane that we haven't built yet. But as a functional piece, the spire has to be the tallest part of the oil refinery, of the oil platform, so these tanks kind of peak just below it. We're going to need pipes coming out the top of these tanks anyway, from the pump, as a place for the pump to send all of the oil. You see me here using both stone and cobblestone waterproof pipes. That's so that we can get the maximum amount of oil into those tanks as quickly as possible. And then I use gold waterproof pipe to come down and feed those two. And that feeds up to the pump, but isn't quite connected yet because we haven't got the engines in place. I come underneath the glass tanks and put in these redstone engines along with the wooden waterproof transport pipes. These are going to be what pumps the oil out of these tanks and sends it on its way to the refinery section. It's where it can be turned into fuel. Again, I used stone and cobblestone pipes to mix up the outflow from the tanks so that the pipes don't get too confused and don't know which way to go. I put in, as well, reinforced glass floors because I want with this oil refinery everybody to be able to see the workings of the refinery itself. All the pipes will be on display so you can see the oil coming from the pump, you can see the oil going to the refinery, the fuel coming from it, and the fuel sent to the tanks, etc, etc. So I came around here, started up the engines with a few redstone torches, and put in a few iron fences as decoration and a bit of safety as well. And with the tank section complete, it was time to think about the engine bay. I came out here and did the same thing I did with the living quarters, with the residential area, and dug down with a square, put in machine blocks as flooring, and then started to build the side with, I believe, reinforced concrete. I put a reinforced concrete door there as well, because the combustion engine bay is something that could explode. And if that happens, well, we've got to be prepared. So this whole building is going to be built out of mostly reinforced concrete as a safety mechanism. I considered obsidian. It would have been slightly safer, but it would have been extremely ugly. And reinforced concrete seems to be there to do exactly what we're putting it here for. So I put in the engines. We're going to be using 12 combustion engines, although they're in the wrong position right now because I forgot how many pipes we need to put into these things for the fuel, the water, and to bring out the power. So I moved them up by 1 block, all of them, to give myself more space to feed into and out from these engines. You see the golden wooden conductive pipes here? That's how the power is going to escape the engines, and that's where all of our power is going to be thrown out from the engine bay. I used stone pipes here for the fuel input and cobblestone for the water, so as not to confuse myself. The fuel comes in at the back of the engines, and the water comes in at the top. And this is a very busy scene indeed. You see me coming around here, around the edge, with reinforced concrete. And once the pipes were in place, it was time to think about the pumping station. So I built this small little outcropping on the side of the platform, because the platform's a very square kind of structure at the moment, and while that's kind of cool because, well, most oil platforms are, it's nice to have a little bit of variation along the edge to keep it from looking too uniform. And so that's what I've done with this pumping station. I've got a small little outcropping, small little section that's going to pump water directly from the sea up through this cobblestone pipe you see here to the coolant tower, which I'm building now with iron scaffold. You see me there going up again with the iron scaffold and feeding the cobblestone pipe up alongside the scaffold. We have to be careful with pipes because if we're not careful, the whole scene is going to look very, very ugly because of the busyness of the pipes. But it's one of the necessary evils of Tekkit that there's no real way to hide pipes unless you want to use teleport pipes. But to me, teleport pipes feel a bit like cheating because you don't have those in real life. They're a bit of a sci-fi creation, and I wanted to keep things kind of a little bit low tech, a bit modern tech. So you see here we come around, panning around the water pumping station, the coolant tower, the oil tanks, all prepared, almost all plumbed in as well, and the engine bay with that mass of different coloured pipes all hooked up. All it needs now is fuel, water, and a redstone input to get those engines started. And there's Gary giving us a hand, jumping all over those engines. So now we're all plumbed in, it was time to come to the top of the engine bay and make it look a little bit nicer. Now I had to, compromise here. We've got to protect the oil refinery from a potential explosion from the engines, but we still want to be able to see everything. So I considered windows on the side, and there are some windows there. But aside from the input holes for the pipes, all I've done is add a glass ceiling, and you're going to be able to walk over this from the galleys that come from both the oil tanks and will come from, as you see me there building out towards it, that will come from the fuel tanks. And we'll have the engine controls up in a small room above this engine bay. And you see me here coming out with golden pipes for the power. Now you see there golden conductive pipes coming out the top, and that's where the power is going to exit the engine bay. Cobblestone pipes in, that's where the coolant is going to be fed into the engines. Stone waterproof pipe in for fuel to the engines, and the gold waterproof pipe around the back is coming from the oil tanks and it's sending it to the refinery bay, which we haven't quite built yet. Again, what we're going to do with the top of the engine bay is turn it into the kind of like the power station control room. That's where everything's going to take place, that's where all the important buttons to push are going to be, and we'll see what we can wire up in terms of getting the engine switches in there and other switches to things like the pump and the coolant station in the refinery bay and all those kinds of things. But check it out, we're almost there guys, we've got a small little bit left and we've got to tart it up a bit, add a little bit of decoration, but we're so close now. Most of the things are plumbed in, we just need the refinery bay and the fuel tanks, get those piped in and piped up, and then we'll be able to throw the switch and finally launch the oil platform, press go and see this baby in action, see the oil come through the pipes, see the fuel flow through all of that wondrous creation. So I've been Sjin, thanks for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Let's Build an Oil Platform, and I'll see you guys next time, so stay tuned, hit subscribe, hit like and favourite if you want to see more, and yeah, keep on building and keep on enjoying Tekkit. Take care.